Hello. Hi, everyone. I think Michael is with us now. Mikey, are you there? Can
I'm
somebody?
here.
Good. So I had like an introduction planned for a minute, but because we are running a little late, can we directly get to the event and we can get started?
Okay, so I guess that means we're starting.
Yes.
Okay, welcome everybody. So nice to be here, and really is a joy to be here with all of you. I thought we would start with a little process, if that's okay. So what I would encourage everybody to do is to start with closing their eyes. Let's all sit up, close our eyes. And you know the routine. Take a deep breath in, breathe out, and relax. And take your mind back in time. Before Art of Living. Maybe it was only a few weeks ago, or it could have been months ago, or years ago. But take your mind back to the time before you came to the Art of Living. Who you were as a person, what you were interested in, what you used to talk about, what did you think about, the expressions you used, what was important, what wasn't important. And again, deep breath in and let go. And now let's come back and open our eyes. Wonderful. So while you were going back in time and you were remembering what life was before Art of Living, how many of you had this expression, Aho, Naranjano? Did that come into your mind? Was that something you were aware of before Art of Living? Probably not. So here's an expression that's so meaningful to all of us. It's an expression that brings us into the present moment. It's an expression that makes us appreciate our life and wisdom and the fact that we're on the path together. So 29 years ago, 1991, Gurudev started his commentary on Ashtavakra. It was in August, actually August 11th. So this year we're celebrating the 29th year. And I was talking to Hari and some other people, and somehow this event manifested. And I thought, since most of you have gone through the Ashtavakra knowledge series, it would be fun to go back in time and to know how the whole thing came about. Yeah? So I was one of the fortunate people to be in Bangalore at the ashram in 1991. In fact, I was one of the first people from outside of India to come and get to spend time with Gurudev. I was there for 2 years. And, we would meet every night for satsang. And there weren't many people who came for satsang in those days. There was maybe a dozen of us that would meet in Gyan Mandir, our city center in Jainakar in Bangalore. And then eventually we moved to the ashram on Kanakapura Road. And that was a really big event for all of us. And there was this one man, one young guy, who his name was Michael Spots. Gurudev gave him the name Chaitanya. And he was an awkward kind of character. He was very tall and he was very dogmatic and very caught up in various different concepts. He went into Jainagar and he went to a metaphysical bookstore and he picked up a copy of Ashtavakra. And night after night that we would have satsang, he would take this book and he would put it on Gurudev's sofa, or he would put it on the table that was in front of Gurudev, just hinting that it would be nice for him to have a commentary. And one day Gurudev picked up the book. He maybe looked at a few pages, put it down. I guess he absorbed it all in that moment. And then he started speaking on Ashtavakra. But those talks are not the same talks that you're all aware of. In fact, those talks happened in the library on the old campus. That building doesn't exist anymore. Gurudev's father, Pitaji, had built this amazing library that had so many archival Vedic scriptures and different books on Veda. And we were sitting in there one day and Gurudev started talking on Ashtavakra. There was probably 11, 12 talks that he gave. They were crudely recorded. Good luck in finding those recordings. I haven't been able to get those recordings. And then he stopped speaking. Those talks, I don't really remember very much about, except that they were very, very metaphysical in nature, more than I could comprehend at that time. And then several months later, by this time we had organized international silence courses. People from all over the world had come to the ashram. In fact, I can see one person who's online who was there at that time. Petra, nice to see you. So many people came from all over the world to be there. And then Gurudev decided he was going to speak more officially on Ashtavakra. And those talks are the talks we all know. And I had this idea that every word that Gurudev said should be recorded, and we should save those words for posterity. So I wanted to have a video camera to record these talks and every talk that Gurudev gave during satsang. We didn't have much money and video cameras were not so available for consumers at that time in India. So I was the ashram manager. And, there was no email. We did very little phone calls. So I would write to people and ask them to bring things. A lot of times I asked people to bring chocolate, but one person I had given the task to bring a video camera, my good friend, Jeff Hauk. And he came from the United States and he brought a very low grade consumer Hi8 camera. And I was so excited that I went to the airport to pick him up as soon as he came to Bangalore. Before saying hello, the words out of my mouth was, "Did you bring the camera?" And sure enough, he did. And we went back to the city ashram, Gya Mandir, and I plugged it into the power socket and it didn't work. And I read the instruction manual 2 or 3 times. I figured everything out about the camera, tried again to plug it in, and the camera didn't work. Over and over again, I tried my best to get the camera to work, but it didn't work at all. I was so disappointed. So Jeff and I went to Gurudev's kutir. He invited us in. And instead of saying hello to Jeff, the first thing Gurudev said to Jeff was, "Did you bring the camera?" And we had to tell him that the camera arrived, but it wasn't working, and that we had tried everything and we couldn't get the camera to work. And Gurudev looked at us and he said, but the talks that I'm going to be given need to be recorded for posterity. Thousands, maybe he even said millions, I don't remember, will watch these talks and get so much knowledge from them. He says the camera has to work. And we didn't know what to do. And then Gurudev just sat there and he closed his eyes. And I've had this experience a few times with him where as the lids of his eyes started to close, the lights in the room started to dim. And I had no choice but to fall into a deep state of meditation. So I don't know how long we meditated for. We could have meditated for a half hour, 45 minutes. I think it was more than an hour, though, that we were sitting there in such deep meditation. And then all of a sudden, I heard the sound, the sound that we all endear so much. And my eyes opened, and Gurudev was looking, and he had his beads twirling, and he just said, I think you should check the camera again. You must have missed something. I'm sure it's working. And we went back to our room and we tried plugging the camera in, and sure enough, it was working. And then we needed to get all the extra equipment. We needed to get a tripod, and we needed to get lighting, and we needed to get microphones to set the stage so Gurudev could actually speak. And we decided to go into the industrial part of Bangalore to buy this. Maybe some of you have been to the Chickpet area in Bangalore. It's really all set up with industrialized, and you can buy anything there, but you really need to know where to go. And it's really the old part of Bangalore. The roads are just cobblestones, and they're very narrow roads. Even an auto rickshaw can't even go through there. You have to walk and navigate. So I went with Rashri Patel, another dear friend of mine who was in Bangalore at the time. And we went into the Chickpet area, and we found the area where there was video equipment or camera movie making equipment. And Rashri looks at me and she says, find what you want. Choose the best of everything that you want. Don't worry about the price, but don't negotiate. Don't ask anybody the price. Don't talk to anybody. You just go in and find what you want, and then leave this shop. And I said, well, why should I leave the shop? A short Jewish white man from Southern California negotiating with these store owners. There's no way we're going to get but robbed on this. So just leave. And she stayed in the shop and she negotiated. And I would imagine we got it all for free. I have no idea. She never told me how much we paid for anything, but we got more than what we needed. And we brought it up to the ashram and we set it up. And then on August 11th, Gurudev started his commentary on Ashtavakra. And, you know, when you watch the Ashtavakra and you hear Gurudev talk, especially in the first few tapes, maybe between talk 1 and 10, he's referring to the people who are in front of him. And we were really a motley crew. I don't know how we got so lucky and so deserving to be sitting there with him. There was such a small group of us, and I don't think we were spiritually matured at all. Gurudev references that people are thinking about washing their laundry in buckets and realigning their suitcases instead of meditating, and dreaming about mango milkshakes and pizza. And that was really the case. I mean, that's exactly what was going on for us. You know, we were so consumed about washing our clothes in the buckets, and we had no place to store our clothes. So we would realign our suitcases every day. And if we went into the city, we found this place, Suksagar in Jainagar, that made the best mango milkshakes. And if we could escape from the ashram and go into town and have some pizza, anything that would bring us back to Western culture, chocolate chip cookies or something like that, that was such a high priority for us. Knowledge took a back seat, but indulging our senses was so important to us. And we were the people who got to sit there for Ashtavakra. And, the actual talks happened in a place called Devi Place, which is on the old campus. It doesn't really exist anymore. There are administration buildings that have been built there. But it was a big open courtyard. And in the courtyard was one murti, one Devi, which was Saraswati. And Gurudev was facing Saraswati. And I don't know if the knowledge he was giving was to Saraswati or Saraswati was giving the knowledge to Gurudev, but it seemed like they were having a conversation during Ashtavakra, and somehow we were all there. And I was lucky to be the person who was the cameraman. So if things are out of focus or the lighting doesn't look good, that's because it's all my fault. So I'm the person to blame on all those things. And there were so many disturbances during the recording of Ashtavakra, so many things that would cause us to stop the recording. I think in one of the videos, you can sense that there are torrential downpours because it's the beginning of the monsoon season, and the recording ends and then it goes on to the next day. And there's so many trucks that are going by Kanakapura Road. And you can hear the cacophony and symphony of the dogs barking in the background as Gurudev is speaking. But the most charming disturbance for me was that we had these huge lights to record the videos, and they were so bright, and the temperature that came off of them, they were just so hot. And there were so many moths, and the moths were so attracted to the light, they would fly into the flame, into the light of the camera, and they would just burst into flames, and there would be smoke and fire all over and near the lights, and everybody would turn to look at the lights. Oh my, what happened? But Gurudev would just continue, and nothing would stop the knowledge from flowing. And Devi Place, in the beginning, it was just a completely opened courtyard, you could say. And when the rainy season started to come, we had to take shelter because we were all getting wet. So we decided that we needed to put some cover above and enclose the place. And back then in 1991 in Bangalore, and where we were located, all the way in the outskirts, we couldn't find a good engineer or good construction workers, laborers, because Bangalore was so far away. And now if you go to the ashram, Kanakapura Road is completely connected. There's even a train that you can take to the ashram. But in those days, we were really in the rural outskirts of the city. So we couldn't find really quality people to come and do any engineering for us. So we had a thatched roof that was built. Some of the local villagers came in and they built this thatched roof. And that lasted for quite some time until the monsoons really started to pour down and the roof got very damp, and we started to get a hole in the roof and the rain started to flow in. So one of the devotees who was at the ashram, his name was Kirpal, and he was very handy. He had been in the military for many years. He decided he was going to go up on the roof and he was going to repair the roof so that Ashtavakra could continue. And he went up with some plastic tarping and maybe some sheets of metal or something to repair the roof. But instead of repairing the roof, he wound up going right through the roof. And Ashtavakra had to be canceled that night because for hours and hours on end, there was a man on top of the roof with his leg dangling on the ceiling. And the conversation would have been between Gurudev Saraswati and this dangling leg. So, I mean, it was really such a crude environment as compared to what we now know as our wonderful, beautiful, comfortable ashram. It was really a challenge in those days. And, all those talks got recorded. Um, and eventually it was my time to leave Bangalore and come back home to the US, to California. So I brought all the recordings with me because I never knew with the environment what would happen to the recordings and if they would actually survive or not. So I brought them home, and probably after 6 months, maybe 9 months, I got it into my head, I think I should edit all these videos so that we can make them public and everybody can enjoy and hear them. So, the opening of Ashtavakra, first of all, the music of Ashtavakra. I know we were just playing that before you all came on. That music was in the background. There was this metaphysical bookstore that we all used to go to in Jayanagar, and we all bought this one cassette recording of Adi Shankara Stostram that was recorded by Brahmananda Saraswati from the Chinmay mission. And the beginning of that recording, you could actually find this on YouTube if you do some digging. That's where that flute music from that opening of Ashtavakra comes from. And somehow I thought, oh, that's the perfect music. Isn't it the perfect music? Isn't it so like eerie and, it just takes you right in. If you hear that music, you know exactly what you're in for. So that's where the music comes from. And the opening of the crown and the Guru Patakas and the peacock feathers and that whole image, that was made in my kitchen. I went and purchased that and draped the blue background, and all of that was designed in my kitchen. I had a little video camera and recorded that for the opening of Ashtavakra. And, we were such a tiny organization back in the 90s, and we had very, very little money. And we also didn't have the vision for where everything was going. So to purchase video equipment, that was unheard of. We couldn't afford anything like that. So I found some commercial outlet that would rent video equipment. And I lived in Santa Monica, California, and this place was in Pasadena, a good hour and a half from where I lived. So we rented it for the entire weekend, and we got such a deal. It was very inexpensive. And I would take the equipment, bring it to my house on the dining room table. The dining room table became the editing studio. And it was me and another devotee, Thomas Hinesco, who spent the time going over all the material. And we didn't know how to do editing, so we hired an editor. His name was Jake. Jake had no connection with spirituality at all. He had no idea what meditation was all about or anything, but somehow we found him, and he was the person who was editing the Ashtavakra. Jake was a hippie, you could say. He had longer hair than Gurudev, and he had such a bushy red beard. And he was at least between 75 and 125 pounds overweight. He'd wear a very tight t-shirt that came up to his navel. And every morning he would come in. We'd start at 7 in the morning and we'd go till 2 o'clock in the morning because we wanted to make the best and make the most of the time we had rented the equipment. And Jake would always come over, ring the doorbell, and he had iced coffee. And he would drink at least 10 or 12 iced coffees during the day working on Ashtavakra. I never saw him eat anything. He only drank iced coffee. And when we were doing the editing sessions, we didn't want to put every single word Gurudev said in the videos because sometimes he would say things 2 or 3 times, or, a truck went by, or a bus went by, or the dog started barking, or the moths started to blow up in flames. So we wanted to edit things out. And I remember we would want to edit some phrase that Gurudev would say, and Jake would just stand up at the table and say, "You're not taking that out of this recording. This is the most important thing that Sri Sri is saying." So he understood the knowledge better than we understood the knowledge, and he was the advocate for the purity of the knowledge. So we all need to be grateful to Jake. And many years later, after the Ashtavakra was recorded and it was released, Gurudev came to Southern California, and I invited Jake to come. I wanted to introduce him to Gurudev and let Gurudev meet the person who did all the editing for Ashtavakra. And Jake came and he listened to the whole talk, did the meditation, and at the end, I brought him up to meet Gurudev, and I asked him, "How did you like the whole session?" And Jake looked at me and said, "I think he's much better on video." So a true video man. He didn't enjoy the live session with Gurudev. And since then, we've all been enjoying all the lovely knowledge that we've been exposed to. Just think of it, 33 recordings that we have, and understanding the mechanics of consciousness, understanding the patterns of our mind, understanding how the world functions, and how we've been exposed to this amazing deep knowledge. And, for me, probably for many of us who go through the knowledge for the very first time, it really goes way over your head, right? You get a little of it. Maybe you have a conversation with the other people in the group who are watching, but most of it goes over your head. And I could tell you, I've been watching Ashtavakra recordings for 29 years now. And just yesterday, I was invited to join an Ashtavakra group. And as soon as the knowledge came on, it was like, wow, that's what Gurudev is really talking about. As we get deeper and deeper and expand, more and more is able to enter inside of us. So it's very lovely to be sharing these stories from the old days with you. So do we have some questions that we want to entertain?
I think we have a few questions. So Siddharth, Aditi, do you want to start with the questions? We got a lot of questions, so we have filtered down some for you, and then we can see how far we go. Yeah.
Okay, the first question that we have is, what is the best way to integrate the knowledge of Ashtavakra Gita in your day-to-day life?
Keep meditating. That's the most important thing. There's 2 aspects to art of living. There's knowledge, and then there's experience. The experience is through meditation. If you were to read the book Ashtavakra, or if you just listen to the discourse, that really doesn't make that transformation. The transformation happens in such a natural way, and that's the sadhana. The sadhana is the most important aspect. So Very simple. Do your sadhana every day, right? Were you expecting a more complicated answer to that? No, it's so simple. Just meditate.
Okay. On a lighter note, you remember everything so vividly. Were there any incidents which were very funny while you were recording the Ashtavakra series?
I think I already mentioned a leg dangling from the roof. You don't think that's funny? Absolutely. Yeah. What's the next question?
Yeah. So, did Guruji give any specific instructions to people who were watching the knowledge?
No, there were no specific instruction. We were such a crude group of people. We weren't, very highly evolved individuals. I think we were just there just because Gurudev was there and we had left so many things behind and we were so attracted to it. But I wouldn't say we were very deep. There were silence courses going on in the midst of it. Many, many silence courses happened. We had satsang every night after the talks were given. There were many swamis who came. And yeah, I see there's another person who was here, who was there at that time. Pia is on the recording as well. Nice to see you. What else? Next question.
Yeah. So, people also want to know what all was edited. I mean,
very little was edited, really. It just when Gurudev would repeat things because there was a noise in the background or some, moth was burning and everybody was distracted. So he'd just repeat things. And sometimes he said things in a different way, but it felt like it was a little too complicated from my perspective, at least. And so those things were taken out, but you pretty much have everything. And do you really enjoy that while you're watching Ashtavakra, whenever there's an audience shot, the reason there's an audience shot is because that's where an edit is. And we needed to patch over the edit and replace it with an audience shot. And have you noticed that some of the times Gurudev, you can tell he's speaking in the evening, but it looks like the audience is in the daytime, or it looks like they're not people who were actually listening to the talk at those moments. There were no two cameras. There was just one camera, and it was just like putting a Band-Aid. I mean, this is all we had at that time. So how many of you get disturbed when you're watching it and that audience shot comes in, and then you go, I just saw that person in the last video. It was the same, because there's only like 10 audience shots that we had and we use them over and over again. So
Mikey, we all of us have known, and we know that you have some fantastic stories with Gurudev. So we'd like you to share one of such stories which you feel was like one of the biggest miracles that you have encountered being with Gurudev.
The biggest miracle,
yes,
is to be sitting here and seeing all of you. This is the biggest miracle. The biggest miracle is that one man could touch the lives of so many millions of people around the world. We're all part of this phenomenon. We're all part of this miracle. It's a phenomenon. It really is. It's so incredible. Okay, I'll tell you a story. It'll be a non-Ashtavakra story. But when I first took my course, it was in 1988. Some of you weren't even born in 1988. Can you imagine that? That makes me really old, right? So in 1988, I took my very first course. and it was a Guru Purnima. And it was very, very hot in Southern California at the time. And in those days, when we would do Sudarshan Kriya, there were no recordings. We didn't have a Kriya recording of Gurudev's voice. And there was only one instructor in the whole world who taught Sudarshan Kriya. That was Gurudev. So he would do the Sudarshan Kriya live. And we would do Sudarshan Kriya, at least on my first course, 2.5 hours of Soham. The Kriya that you're all doing now is maybe what, 20 minutes in length? And in those days, it was at least 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And the venue that we had for the course that I took, my very first course, was a small little yoga studio that had no windows, only a door that was open to let some fresh air in. And it was July. And in Southern California, July could be sweltering. It was just so hot. And I just remember after chanting Om 3 times, between doing a couple of Sohams, I just went into such a deep state. I had all the typical experiences of feeling cold and then feeling hot. And then this thing happens to your hands. And I was paralyzed. But it was so hot in the room that I was just drenched in perspiration. And I remember, even though I couldn't move my hand, somehow I took my shirt off and I had a mala and I took the mala off because I was just so uncomfortable. And there was some person who smelled like roses, who kept walking by with a very high-pitched voice. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, who kept saying, continue, 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 continue. And hearing that sound would just get me so I would just get more and more angry. And obviously that voice was Gurudev's voice. And but that sound of him just saying, continue, continue. And since that day, I've been continuing. And it's been such a beautiful, long journey to be here.
So somebody has asked that I know behind every religion there is spirituality. Still, I have some conflict inside to take on some AOL practices since I feel it will take me away from my own religion. So how was this path for you being a Jew, and how have you felt your religion coexist with so many new traditions and practices?
Yeah. Has anybody here read Stumbling into Infinity? Yeah. Yeah, so that story is in Stumbling into Infinity. Yeah, I was brought up in an Orthodox Jewish household. And the connection with the divine was something that was always important to me. And somehow in meeting Gurudev and doing the practices and being exposed to the knowledge, I feel as though my faith in the divine has only gotten stronger and stronger. As far as the religious aspect to it, I can't tell you that I'm more caught up in the practices of the religion, but the spiritual essence of my religion has become more open to me. What is the significance of the religion? What is the significance of the different rituals that we practice? So I would say I've gone much deeper into my religion. And if you really think about Art of Living, clearly Art of Living is not a religion. Yes, Gurudev comes from a Hindu household, a Hindu family, and he's brought and exposed us to the Vedic lifestyle, but it's not a religion. it really is an opportunity for us to explore our own mind, our own emotions, and understand really what is the essence of life, what is the mechanics of nature. That's very different. It's not a belief system. It's an opportunity for us to go in and see what is our own reality. So a true guru really just presents that to you, and then it's up to you to explore. And I think everybody here has had that opportunity to see all the patterns of your mind. Yeah. And I'm sure there are many people on this call who are teachers, and many people who are on this call who have been very active in Seva. And have you found that the more active you are in Seva and the more active you are in teaching programs, you realize the dysfunctionality of the organization that you're associated with, and how everybody in your community is crazy, and how everybody is pushing your buttons, right? And so many times you've wanted to drop it all and just get out of here. This is so incredible. It's making me miserable, but yet you stay with this. And why do you stay with it? Of course, there's the love of Gurudev. That's first and foremost for all of us. But you've really begun to take responsibility for your own mind and your own emotions. And without that, you wouldn't stay with it. And as opposed to pointing the finger at everybody else and saying, you're the cause of my misery, you realize, wait a minute, those buttons are inside me. Those patterns are inside me. I couldn't have these emotional experiences unless there was something that was in me. It's not because of you that I'm so uncomfortable. And we know that having unshakable calmness, inner clarity in the midst of any challenge or crisis is really what knowledge is all about. So it's about knowledge. It's not about necessarily believing in something. We haven't replaced one set of beliefs for another set of belief. It's something that we can experience. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
How you decided to write the book Stumbling into Infinity?
Well, I can't take credit for decided. Gurudev told me many, many, many times that I should write Stumbling into Infinity. He said, you're here at a very special time. Just drops of water are starting to come out of the faucet. And eventually it won't be drops of water, it will be a river flowing. And many people will want to know about your experiences and what it was like in the old days. He said, you should record that. You should write a book so many people could gain from your experience. And he also told me that every spiritual experience I had, he said, those experiences are not for you. Those experiences are there for you to share them with other people and inspire other people. Write a book. So he must have told me this at least a dozen times, And I think the fact that I was not the brightest student and the easiest student for Gurudev. I mean, think of the contrast of Ashtavakra having Janaka as his student and Gurudev having Michael Fischman as his student. This is opposites are complementary. There's no doubt about it, So I really wanted to share with people, what is the difference? What is it really all about to have a spiritual master in your life? And how does the Guru, how does the Satguru work with you to transform you? Really, what happens behind closed doors? with a master. And this is something that many people have concepts about, but they don't really understand. And for me, it's just a love story. Stumbling into Infinity is a love story. And it's really through love, compassion, wisdom that there's a transformation that happens.
Okay. So you just mentioned, Mikey, that it's been about 30 years for you going over the Ashtavakra Gita again and again.
Nope, 29 years, because it can't be 30 years. It only started 29 years ago.
Okay.
We got to
So
keep our math correct.
Yeah, I stand corrected there. Gurudev has also spoken, profoundly on a lot of other things like Bhagavad Gita, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, we have the Narad Bhakti Sutras. What is it about Ashtavakra Gita that makes it stand out and makes it so special?
You know, that's such a hard question to answer, because I think everything Gurudev says is so special, and every knowledge series is so special. And it really is about each one of us individually, how much we can absorb. And consciousness is so vast. It's just so vast. And there's so many aspects of consciousness. And each discourse is a little bit different to hit a different chord inside of us. And whatever resonates with you is the most valuable knowledge series. We're all the same, and yet we're all very different. And we're all going through different things at different times. So at one particular time, one knowledge series may be the most appropriate. At another time, another knowledge series may be the most appropriate. Yeah. So, but aren't we lucky? Look how much knowledge we've received. We're not just, oh, it's only this discourse or just this discourse. Or the whole thing is available to us, right? So listen to everything, absorb everything. How many of you listened to the recent Bhakti Sutra that Gurudev gave? Yeah. So lucky me, I was there for the original Bhakti Sutra that Gurudev gave. That would have been in 1990. That was the very first knowledge series, Bhakti Sutra. And in comparison to what he just shared, I mean, it's at such a higher level. I think the community around him can absorb much, much more. So maybe one day he'll redo Ashtavakra, who knows?
Okay, so this is a very interesting question. A lot of people have been asking this question. So in the early days of Art of Living, Gurudev was more approachable and you had a direct connect with him, and possibly he was able to directly tell you that, do this or do not do that. But today, if somebody is in Art of Living, it's very different. The point of reference that we have to our questions are the knowledge series, the different books that he has written, his talks, his knowledge. So people who started off early in Art of Living, don't you think that they are at an advantage compared to people who have started today?
I think, I don't know if you have this in India, but in the United States, when you drive through a school district, there are signs that say slow children to tell you to slow down because there are children there. But I always think of the sign that says, oh, there are slow children there. And I think the people who were around Gurudev in the early days were slow children. And we needed that direct input for us to move forward. I think you're all so much more evolved than we were in the early days. Somebody had to be there in the very beginning. Some group of people had to be there in the very beginning. But I think if you're looking at it from a perspective of thinking that Gurudev is inaccessible, I think you're looking at it from the wrong perspective, because he's accessible to everybody. Yes, there are more of us. And yes, his time, there's more demand on his time, political demands and economic demands. I mean, the whole world he's putting his attention on. So many different things he's trying to help and solve. But I tell you one thing, if you really, really need his attention is there for you. Whether you're in an event where there are thousands of people and there's absolutely no way you think you could get to Gurudev to talk to him, I tell you, you would find a way, or Gurudev will come right to you. It's just the way it works. He senses you and you sense him. There's a deep connection and he is available. And if it's a matter of just sending an email and getting your message to him, he will read your message. And if it requires follow-up, that he call you or that he sends you a message and reply, he will. So I don't think you should ever think as in terms of he's not accessible. But we really need to stand on our own 2 feet. We need to take responsibility for our life. So yes, in the early days we were coddled, but that coddling is not there for me anymore. I don't have that opportunity. Yes, I may have the opportunity to be in his personal presence, to be behind closed doors with him, but I don't get opportunities to ask personal questions. Those days are over. It's not that there's not enough time, but there's like a force field around Gurudev, and there's just no opportunity to ask a question. So, and I think he does that deliberately so that I can take responsibility for my own life. And by taking responsibility more for my life, I can take responsibility more for other people's lives, right? So everything, I really think everything that is part of Gurudev's life, and for us to be connected to Gurudev, it's all done with such precision for us to grow on the path. It's not accidental. So if you feel as though, oh, I'm missing something, it's an illusion. We're getting exactly what we need at this point in time to grow the fastest.
That's a great perspective, Mikey. Okay, this is another interesting question has been put through by a volunteer. So in art of living, we move from one milestone to the next milestone, and we keep achieving things which seemingly seem so big. I mean, almost impossible. So the question is, how can we have that capability of getting our sankalpas to manifest in our personal lives as well?
I think we're all familiar with the latest knowledge that Gurudev has been sharing with all of us, right? Which is desire, knowledge, and action. When you have a desire and you want that desire to manifest, so you have some information, some knowledge about it, and then it manifests. But if it's a personal desire, haven't you found that it leads you nowhere? Gurudev usually uses the example of the merry-go-round. You're on a merry-go-round, you're on a wooden horse, and you go on a long journey, but you get off the horse exactly where you came on the horse, right? And no matter what desire you have, the desire leaves you nowhere. You were peaceful before you had the desire. Then you have the desire. Then finally it manifests or it doesn't manifest. And you're left in the same place, isn't it? No happier, no wiser. Just you have the fulfillment of desire. You don't have the fulfillment of the desire. You're still left in the same place. You still have more desires. And the only contentment you have is, oh, that energy from that desire has left me. Now, it's very different when you have a desire to uplift humanity. When your desires are seva oriented, it's a very different phenomenon. Because with those types of desires, wisdom and knowledge comes to you. Wisdom and knowledge comes to you about yourself, about life, about what is mind. And then you grow tremendously. And again, it doesn't matter if the desire manifests or it doesn't manifest, but something different, you change, you transform. You transform because wisdom comes to you, right? So all these small desires we have in our life, I'm not saying don't have desires, and these desires are just part of life. But the longer we're on the spiritual path and the more we mature, we feel, many of us feel, oh, those desires are just a nuisance. They're agitating my mind. I can't wait till this cycle finishes. Does anybody have that experience? You just feel like a wave comes over, and then finally that whole thing is over, and then you can finally come back to yourself. So do your best with whatever desires you have to be fulfilled, but that real transformation is when you have desires to uplift humanity, those that brings something of depth to us, to our life.
So there is this one more question. Somebody has asked that how do we know whether the team we are doing seva with is right for us or not?
They're definitely wrong. They're wrong. You are right. No doubt about it. You are 100% right. They're completely wrong. And you should run away from them.
So there is one more question along with this, which says, somebody is experiencing a huge drop in their energy on working with a particular team, and she has stopped enjoying seva anymore. So can something like this happen, or is it just in her head?
I think you're missing something here. And the important thing to really consider is chocolate. Are you eating enough chocolate? If you would have a small piece of chocolate every day, I think you would have a bigger smile on your face and everything would look very different for you. So consider that if that's a real obstacle in your life. One last question.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a lot of people asking where are those raw recordings of Ashtavakra Gita, and is it possible to get our hands on them?
The raw recording, why do you want those? No, this is it. This is it. I mean, this is it. Can you accept that this is it? This is it. All these little desires we have, we want something to be better than something else. Oh, the Ashtavakra recordings. Let me get this raw recordings. What are you going to do with them? Save them, put it in your vault, show them to people and look what I have. Do you think it's going to really bring you greater joy? This is it. This is it. Present moment is inevitable. Which present moment is inevitable? Every present moment is inevitable. And the present moment is deep and vast. We know this intellectually, but yet it's all these little cravings that we have, right? And all these aversions that we have that just take us off center. Yeah. So just come back to yourself. That's really the answer for everything. Anything we look outside ourselves to bring us greater joy, greater fulfillment, it's an illusion. I mean, there's one thing that's kind of outside of ourself, which is His Holiness Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, but he is ourself, right? So that's one thing you can still be feverish about. But everything else, if you really just can take the time to examine, is that really going to bring me great joy in life? I think you'll find, no, that's not the reality. So I think we're just about done on time here. Anything else you want to say, Hari?
It was so wonderful to have you. And I think we can just request for some advice, maybe some parting words from you before we close this.
Parting words would be, bye. Bye. See you all soon.
Thank you very much, Mikey. Thank you very much.
One information that can help people. So we have put this information out on the groups where you can join it and we can have such sessions in the future. And the promise from our side is to keep it to Michael's event. So we will not flood your inboxes or chat rooms with a lot of other information. So this just came up. I mean, I just want to say one more thing. Just like Mikey said, we just were talking about something else and this came up as an idea. So there could be many more things we could do in the future. So look out for that, join the groups.
Yeah, next year we'll do this again, but it won't just be me speaking. We'll have maybe a dozen people who were present during the Ashtavakra recording. Petra and Pia will invite you to be there as well. And there's at least a dozen of us who were there who can participate in it. And that way you can get a fuller picture of what it was really like in the old days. So maybe you can join at that time. Okay. Lovely to be with all of you.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you.